the real Joe, you might be a tailgater. If you don't like Fridays because Tall Tales is not on during the weekend, you might be a tailgater.
Tune in to Tall Tales with me, Bob Klitzkie, Monday through Friday at 4 p.m., only on 93.3 FM. And you, too, can become a tailgater.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Opening the spigots, I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. For only the fourth time in U.S. history, oil supplies will be released from the nation's strategic oil reserves on orders from President Biden, hoping it will lower fuel prices. Energy Secretary Jennifer Granholm.
The president does not control the price of gasoline. No president does. But what we're seeing right now is this global mismatch between supply and demand. Oil production is lagging behind.
About 50 million barrels will be released to the market. Critics call it a drop in the bucket. West Virginia Democrat Senator Joe Manchin says it's a Band-Aid that won't solve what he called the administration's self-inflicted wound of a short-sighted energy policy. Former President Trump says his successor's Build Back Better bill will damage the American economy.
What's happening now to prices is many times more than any possible tax increase that anybody could give. But on top of that, in this new bill, they want big tax increases. People are going to pay massive tax increases. And I'm not talking about the wealthy. I'm talking about everybody.
The former president telling Fox's Hannity the administration is spending money like they're throwing it out the window. There is now a sixth victim from Sunday's vehicle attack on the Christmas parade in Waukesha, Wisconsin. An 8-year-old boy died Tuesday from the injuries he suffered. The driver accused of the attack, Darrell Brooks, made his initial court appearance Tuesday. Court Administrator Kevin Costello setting his bond at $5 million.
I've not seen anything like this in my very long career. It seems to be a very strong case for the state.
Many in the community outraged to learn that Brooks was free on a small bond after allegedly running down his child's mother with the same car earlier in the month. America is listening to Fox News.
When's the last time you looked at your homeowner's insurance?
An easily overlooked part of covering our home is what's inside of it. Over time, we buy things we don't want to lose, but don't update our contents coverage. The smart thing to do is get the answers and level up our insurance to make sure we're totally protected.
That's the Insurance Extra Point. Get out there and make something good happen today by calling Guahan Insurance Services at 475-1162 or visit us at the Camacho Landmark Center in Tamuning.
Come try Guam's original Chamorro restaurant with Pica's best 5 years running. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus to naktak, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet hamburgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña and Grand Plaza Tuman location. Call their Hagåtña location at 479-2652 for reservations.
In a few minutes from now, NASA is scheduled to launch a space probe on a mission to target an asteroid.
What would we do if a giant asteroid were on a collision course with us?
It's the stuff of movies. Every once in a while, out of deep space, in the history of the Earth, comes an asteroid that can turn into a killer asteroid.
That's why NASA Science Chief Thomas Zurbuchen says the agency tonight will launch DART, or the Double Asteroid Redirection Test. It will strike an asteroid in hopes of changing its path. Now, this is a test. The asteroid isn't a threat.
So success is a measurable impact from the ground that is more than a minute or so of orbit duration change.
And a companion satellite will be there to take video of the impact next September. Eben Brown, Fox News.
In the trial of 3 men accused of killing Ahmaud Arbery last summer in Brunswick, Georgia, the jury heard final closing arguments and began its deliberations Tuesday. Recessing after about 6 hours, they'll resume in the morning. A jury in Virginia has ordered 17 white nationalist leaders and their organizations to pay $26 million in damages for the deadly 2017 Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville. President Biden and the First Lady have left Washington for the holiday, traveling to Nantucket Island. By next spring, spring, you'll need $1.25 to shop at a popular dollar store.
$1.25 Tree isn't the right name, but that's the right price for the discount retailer. Dollar Tree announcing it will begin charging $1.25 for most of its products at all locations nationwide by the end of April. The company in a statement saying the increase will allow it to materially expand its offerings, introduce new products and sizes, and provide families with more of their daily essentials. The move will also allow Dollar Tree to bring back items that were discontinued due to the $1 threshold. Investors enthusiastically embraced the idea. Dollar Tree had the biggest gain in the S&P 500 Tuesday, jumping more than 9%. Steve Rappaport, Fox News.
And I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
Santa's come in and things are looking up. Bank Pacific has rolled out Rudolph's favorite My Christmas loan with an annual percentage interest rate as low as 3.99% and up to $50,000. And with the new Bank Pacific contactless Visa debit card, you can have the flexibility of using your money when you want to, where you want to. My Christmas Loan contactless Visa debit card. Let's make Christmas merrier this year. Equal opportunity lender. Credit conditions apply. Merry Christmas from Bank Pacific.
When's the last time you looked at your homeowner's insurance?
We buy a homeowner's policy and never give it another thought until something happens. Life brings changes, and our coverage needs can change. The smart thing to do is get the answers and level up our insurance to make sure we're totally protected.
That's the Insurance Extra Point. Get out there and make something good happen today by calling Guahan Insurance Services at 475-1162 or visit us at the Camacho Landmark Center in Tamuning.
As we celebrate this holiday season, we reflect on the hardships of the past 2 years and remain grateful for the family and friends who share our journey and lighten our burdens. The team at Security Title is proud of the work we do to support ourselves and our families, to serve and care for our customers, and to give back to our community. May this season of joy and the new year bring happiness, good health, and prosperity to you and yours. Merry Christmas from all of us at Security Title.
Guam Auto Spot has the best selection in Buick, GMC, Mitsubishi, and used cars like the 2021 Mitsubishi Mirage starting at $127 per paycheck. Zero down. Call 671-478-AUTO to take a test drive or get pre-approved online at GuamAutospot.com.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. A good way to start a radio program, any radio program. Let me rephrase that. A good way to start every radio program. But as usual, we're ahead of the flock. That's why Tall Tales is the #1 afternoon talk show, #1 rated afternoon talk show in the Western Pacific. That rating comes straight from the Tall Tales think tank, Statistical and Research Bureau. We can't be too far off because The Point is, according to the Daily News Pika contest, the most favorite radio station on the island. So here we are, leading up to Thanksgiving Day tomorrow. Jose and I are going to make the sacrifice. No Tall Tales tomorrow. We'll spend it with our families. We'll enjoy every single minute of it. We'll be thankful for a lot of things. But no matter what, we're going to miss Tall Tales. Once you get in the groove of doing this show every day, it's a hard habit to break. It's kind of like sitting down and eating strawberry shortcake for dessert. All right, let's go from there to Zemi Ikotny. And once again, the Post shows that it has a swift and sure grasp of the obvious, as though this is good raw material upon which to build an editorial. Here's the title, COVID-19, And when they say COVID-19, what they really mean is Wuhan virus. Wuhan virus issues may have masked Guam's lingering meth problem, but lives are still being ruined by this drug menace. On Tuesday, a jury in the federal court found a Guam man, James Rombao Damaso, guilty of possession with intent to sell methamphetamine. Co-actor Jeffrey Baldonado previously took a plea deal with prosecutors that admitted he possessed meth with the intent to distribute the drug. Federal agents found 139 grams of meth on Damaso in 2019. I read somewhere 3 pounds. Why do people insist on using these metric measurements that don't mean squat to any of their readers? I know a gram is a small measurement. If you want me to take it seriously, tell me what it is in pounds and ounces. That's probably not the way it's supposed to be. The United States and one other country, maybe Ghana, are the only 2 countries in the world that have not embraced the metric system. But still, that's where we are. If I told you that to get from here to Jigo, it's 4.5 kilometers, you'd want to say the first thing out of your mouth would be, how far is that? Or the temperature today is 36 degrees Celsius. Really? Is it that cold? God, only 36? Anyhow, it's much easier just to print the metric weight instead of doing a little math and making it easier on your readers. Based on the volume of drugs seized, this is not small-time drug dealing. This is not Damaso's first meth conviction. He was convicted in 2009 of meth possession with the intent to sell the illegal drug. He was sentenced to a mere 12 months in prison the first time around. The Damaso case is one of the latest in a revolving door of drug dealers on Guam who serve their time or who get some quick time in jail or prison, but then are set free and again get involved in drug dealing. This case shows that despite the preoccupation of elected officials with Wuhan virus matters, the decades-old meth problem that's still ruining many Guamanian families' lives remains in our midst, and there's no sign of it being eradicated anytime soon. In the most recent Damaso case, the federal prosecutors mentioned that when Damaso was stopped in 2019, cash worth $31,418 was found in his car. What would cash that's worth $31,418 worth look like, Jose?
About 39 grams.
About, wouldn't it look like $31,418? Isn't that what?
It would.
Yeah. Let's listen to this. Cash worth $31,418 or something. Now, when I read that, I said, the guy must be a numismatist, because he's got these old dollar items of currency, $10 bills, whatever, the value of which is $31,418. Now, the face value of the bills may only be a couple $100.
Maybe they were pesos.
It could be, but it says cash worth $31,418.
That's a lot of pesos.
Yeah, it could have just said $31,418 in cash was found, and his car in denominations consistent with being drug proceeds. That's a real prize-winning sentence, too. Let me just check my billfold here. I want to find out what having cash consistent with being drug proceeds are. Then I won't carry that kind of cash.
They're all rolled up.
Just to be on the safe. Yeah, that's cocaine, right? Just to be on the safe side. So if cash consistent with drug proceeds means $100 bills, I'll just carry nothing but $1 bills.
You might get in trouble with your wife.
True. All right. This indicates that more than likely there is a greater supply of methamphetamine on Guam streets now than there was 2 decades ago. The price of 1 gram of crystal methamphetamine decreased from a range of $600 to $1,000 in 1999 to $250 to $500 in 2001, the DEA stated in a 2003 drug risk assessment on Guam. Each week, police arrest suspects for alleged crimes fueled by meth use. Nearly every week, new cases are filed in the Superior Court that tell of Guam residents accused of stealing other people's property or attacking loved ones because of methamphetamine use. There was an occasion when someone even was casing the carport of our chief of police, possibly to steal his motorcycle, until the chief assigned random patrol checks to his carport. It's evident the meth problem on Guam persists. But with a lot of focus on the Wuhan virus pandemic, the government's focus on fighting back against the illegal drug trade might be obscured if not taking a back seat. Let's hope for the better, not the latter. Well, I just like to put my own 2 cents worth in here. You know, we have people that, well, let me back up a second here. Everything that I've read about, everything I've seen shows that long-term use of methamphetamine really tears up your body. You know, you got to run a good chance of losing your teeth. Your skin goes to hell. You become skinny to the point of being emaciated. It really tears up your body. Maybe what we ought to do, with the consent of these poor unfortunates, is trot them around and let young folks see them. You want to use methamphetamine? This is where you're going. Give it a shot. This is how it works. You know, maybe it's good today, but this is what's going to happen to you. And then with respect to people that we bust for for methamphetamine, in addition to a long sentence, there ought to be some penance involved. They ought to be required as a condition of their release to visit schools and other public venues and saying, I dealt methamphetamine, and because I did, these are the bad things that happened. I'm really, really sorry. Maybe you can find it in your heart to forgive me. Maybe that would work, maybe it wouldn't. But what we have now is a processing of people through the judicial system with really a very small downside risk compared to the gain involved. If you can put, one chip on one number on the roulette wheel, your chances of winning are only 1 in 35. But if you put $1 on that number and it hits, you get $35 back. And that's the way it is with methamphetamine. People get into it for a relatively small amount of money with the understanding that they can make large amounts of money if they can avoid getting caught. So I think we need to rethink the criminal law system, and I think we need to rethink our educational system with respect to methamphetamine if we're going to make any headway at all, if we're not going to just continue to do the same old thing and wonder why it doesn't work. Okay, the Daily News. The Daily News is coming out strongly against Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. Blasphemy. Here's the headline on the Daily News editorial. Our view, deer farming is a good idea, but we need a slaughterhouse. I don't think you can farm deer. I don't think you could take deer antlers or deer ears or damot binadu or whatever and bury it in the ground and hope that a deer is going to grow up there. It's not how you raise deer. A bill that would allow deer to be raised as livestock could be a good idea for the island's agricultural industry. Deer would help the island reduce its reliance on imported meat, and it would provide restaurants with a new delicacy on the menu. During a hearing last week, senators looked forward to the prospect of deer ranches. And once again now, deer, deer ranches, I don't know of any place in the United States, if the entire world, where people raise deer as livestock for meat.
There's sanctuaries, but yeah, you're right. I don't know if there's any ranch.
And at least in the state where I grew up, it's against the law to sell game. You go out and shoot a deer, you can't sell the meat from that deer. You can eat it. You can give it to your friends. Actually, there's a ritual. When you go out and shoot that deer, the first thing you do is strap it to the right front fender of your car. Of course, this was a lot easier when cars had fenders, right?
Maybe you can sell your car.
Then you drive back to your hometown, and you spend 3 or 4 hours driving very slowly around your hometown so that everyone can see the deer that you brought back. You may even want to honk your horn from time to time so that no one misses your passage. Then after you do that, you find that tree out in your front yard, you hang the deer up by its hind legs and let him hang there for at least a week so everybody can say, hey, look, whoa, man, Bob shot a 6-point buck. Good for Bob. Of course, that was pretty easy back in the days when we had cold winters. You didn't have to worry too much about the deer. But that's the ritual that you go through. Later on, you might get around to skinning the deer. And if you really know what you're doing, you can make gloves and all kinds of interesting things out of either the deer skin or the deer hide with the fur on it. And then you can butcher the deer, and the meat is pretty good eating. People like it because it's a little different. But I never heard of anyone raising deer as a meat product. And I suspect there are good reasons for that, because deer are not domestic animals. They're wild animals. So when humans domesticated bovines as cattle, there was a lot of selective breeding to get the kind of cattle that they wanted. You can have one breed. You could have Holstein Friesian cattle that give tremendous amounts of milk. Guernsey and Jersey cattle, which give milk not as in copious quantities, but with a higher content of butterfat. Or you can raise something like Black Angus, and nobody cares about what kind of milk a Black Angus has because they're really good for beef cattle. But a deer is a deer is a deer. So I don't understand the efficacy of doing that. Now, I suspect, and this is just a possibility, that the thinking is there are wild deer on Guam. We could capture those deer and then raise them in a confined area, and when they're mature, we could butcher them and sell the meat. It just does not sound like a very good idea to me. Okay, we've got Clint Ridgell, who introduced the bill. One of my favorite senators, Clint Ridgell, said he imagines a time when locally raised deer meat can be sold in Guam stores or sold in restaurants that will be able to serve local dishes like kadun binadu or kelagun binadu. Yeah. According to the North American Deer Farmers Association, deer farming generates $7.9 billion for the U.S. economy. This alternative agricultural pursuit is a promising way to preserve the traditional rural way of life while taking advantage of a booming industry, the group notes on its website. Senator Chris Dueñas said deer meat could be another unique delicacy for Guam, that if it's readily available to the hotels and restaurants as they develop their diversification of their menu, it brings something unique to Guam. Guam Department of Agriculture Director Chelsea Munya-Brecht said her department supports the plan. Under the bill, deer taken from Guam's jungles may be raised as livestock. This is where game management and the agricultural industry will overlap. Sustainability, restorative agriculture, and food security are concepts we're using to usher in Guam's agricultural renaissance. In order for the deer as livestock plan to benefit the island, we need to have a place to safely and legally process the meat. Otherwise, it won't make it onto the menu in any restaurant, and it won't replace any imported meat at the grocery store. We need a slaughterhouse. Rigel also introduced a bill to encourage the establishment of a slaughterhouse, but that proposal got a cooler reception at a recent hearing. Since the 1960s, farmers, ranchers, and senators have debated the need for a slaughterhouse, but still don't have one. Everybody agrees that we should have a slaughterhouse except for one small group of people, the folks who are going to live where the slaughterhouse is built. They're the ones that don't want it. Munya Breck said since the introduction of mobile slaughterhouses in Hawaii, deer has become that state's largest livestock industry. That's encouraging news. If the promise of ordering Kadun Binadu or Kelagun Binadu motivates our leaders to solve the slaughterhouse puzzle, our agricultural industry will benefit. Very interesting editorial. Okay, let's take a break, Jose, and I'm going to come back and talk with Repeat, who wants to talk about the local war on ice, and Frenchie, who wants to talk about raising and selling venison.
Hafude, konnichiwa, patois, ciao. Enter for a chance to win the 76 Circle K World Cuisine Giveaway. Be one of 3 lucky winners to win a passport of free food from around the world at over 15 different local restaurants. Just stop by any 76 Circle K, purchase $35 or more in fuel to get an entry form. Drive by today and taste the world with 76 Circle K's World Cuisine Giveaway. Visit 76circlekguam.com for more details. Some conditions apply. Circle K, take it easy.
Afre, my name is Kiona Rivera, student at the University of Guam and recent recipient of the G is for Giving Scholarship. This holiday season, I'm encouraging our island community to support the G is for Giving campaign. Your generous contribution not only support programs at the university, but also helps students like me reach our academic goals. For more information on how you can help shape the future leaders of our island, call the UOG Endowment Foundation at 671-735-2957 or visit their website at give.uog.edu.
We now return to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, soaring over the confusion with his superpowers of truth. Call 888-TALK. That's 888-8255.
Okay, we've got Repeat on the line who wants to talk about the local war on ice. Fight it out, Repeat.
Hey, Uncle Bob. You remember the big, I guess it was like a lifted truck and a Corvette that GPD used to have that was all fancied out, and we used to bring it to the schools. It was confiscated from a drug dealer named Roy Cabakang.
I remember that. I remember that. And I remember Roy Cabakang also, yeah.
You know, his case is still under appeal, believe it or not. I just heard through the grapevine that his final appeal is set for, I guess, hearing later on this year, or I'm sorry, next year. But anyways, I was part of that War on Ice program with GPD, and we used to take, I don't remember his name, but we used to go to DOC, pick him up. He's serving a life sentence, but he's that guy that was high on meth and he plowed into a bus stop full of kids. Remember that case?
Too well. 2 kids.
Yeah,
it was 2 kids, yeah.
Yeah, we used to pick him up from DOC, take him around to the schools, and have him tell his story to the school kids. And I remember the DARE program, you know, that's kind of what set me straight. It doesn't work for everybody, but I remember the story when I was sitting there probably 4th or 5th grade, and at the time, you know, the big scary drug, the scary boogeyman at the time was heroin still before ice, and they told the story of this guy that got high for the first time and went into the bathroom and took a razor blade, and because he couldn't feel anything, he cut his face, all the skin off of his face. So that scared me straight. I was like, I'm never going to do heroin. So Anyways, yeah, they need to do something like that again because I don't see them doing that.
Wow. Yeah, that's a good point, Pete.
Yeah, and to the point of the deer, I do remember when I was in Kyrgyzstan, I didn't go, but they did offer a tour for R&R. You could go out to one of the deer farms that they had out there in Kyrgyzstan. So some places in the world, maybe not as old of a tradition in the U.S. It's more of a new tradition, but they do raise deer. At least in Kyrgyzstan, it's been around for generations.
Okay, well, that's interesting, Pete.
Yeah. All right, Uncle Bob, I just wanted to throw that out there, and it's just kind of amazing that Roy Kabakang's case is still kicking around.
Yeah, it must have been some up and down, some remands and things, huh?
Yeah, because that was early 90s, that case.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A couple of his brothers took a fall, too, as I recall.
Yeah, and that guy, he had his fingers everywhere. Remember there was customs involved, GPD officers involved, port people involved. He had everybody on the take.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we brought him down. I remember we raided several of their houses, his houses, and the guy never worked, and he had all these cars and guns and money and young women hanging around. So you wonder, was it just his charm that everybody would give him money and all these attractive young women would swarm around him like bees?
A bad sign, having attractive women swarming around you like bees.
Right, and you're not employed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, well...
So, have a happy Thanksgiving and stimulate the economy on Friday. Everybody's off, so they'll be out shopping.
Well, not everybody's going to be off on Friday. Jose and I wouldn't take Friday off if you required it. We would still we're going to do our jobs.
All right. Well, then we'll wait for you on Friday.
See you then, Pete. So long. Yeah, I'm going to talk a little bit about Friday off when we get to the cards. If you're, please hang around for that one. Okay, Frenchie, let's have a deer conversation.
All right, my dear Robert. All right. So the deer farming has been going on for at least 30 years in the United States. And your state of origin, Wisconsin, along with Minnesota, is one of the most successful states with deer farming. But it is not as simple an operation as people think. You need to have a secure fencing for the areas where the deers are going to be. You need to have a follow-up as far as a veterinary thing, because deers have a lot of disease they can carry, and I'm sure Dr. Poole could come and call us and tell us all the different types of zoological disease the deers are carrying.
I think if we had Dr. Tom Poole on the air, he could tick off the names of
it could take us off. So then, of course, there is the tick and the tick issues, because if you're producing deer, when you raise deer, you have three byproducts. One is antlers. The main customers for deer antlers is Chinese medicine. You have skins. On what I see from the local deer, it's probably would take a lot of skins to have an industry that could come out of this. And then, of course, you have the meat, which means that you need a slaughterhouse. But as you mentioned in passing, slaughterhouses generate a lot of pollution. And so you need to have a huge investment in having all the right steps so that it doesn't pollute the water. It's slaughterhouse also are high consumers of water, And of course, there is the olfactive issue. If you're a neighbor of a slaughterhouse, it doesn't smell the best thing to be around with, especially if you're downwind. So the investments are quite significant. They are not something to be laughed about. You need to, if you take the surface that you need, you probably also need to bring extra food during the dry season. You probably, if you have high number of deers, you need to be able to feed them. All of that stuff probably needs to come from off island. So it's an interesting idea. I don't know if their business plan have really been thought about. It might be another pie in the sky. And Munya Barnes is wrong. Why he produced more beef than they produce deer. I forgot the name of that island northwest of Oahu, which is privately held and is the largest ranch in the Pacific, right?
Well, there's a privately held island in the Hawaii chain called Ni'ihau. But the largest ranch is Parker Ranch, and that's on the Big Island. And it is big, yeah.
And they produce a huge amount of beef, which is the reason why Hawaii doesn't need to import meat. They produce their own meats on the archipelagos. So, it's interesting if they could put it with other species like goat, sheep, or other things. It could be done, but this is not as easy as some of the proponents making it sound. It's
well, the part that doesn't sound very logical to me, Frenchie, is we have a small herd of wild deer on the island, so we'll go out and catch those, and that's what we're going to start slaughtering. I suspect that places that do deer herding on large scales are not going out in the woods and capturing deer. They're buying them from commercial breeders.
Originally they did, originally the stocks of it, but then after they do DNA, it's a huge industry. They do DNA selection to have the best weight ratio to the food that they eat and all those things. So it's not that easy. And a lot of farmers in the U.S. are always worried when they have a deer farm next to them because they carry, like the buffalo, they carry disease that can affect pig, chicken. So here it would be caribous and all those things. So it's very interesting. And I don't think our local herd is that huge. It would probably take several years of breeding in order to get enough of a production that would be sustainable to provide food for the supermarkets and the hotels and all those things. So I don't know.
It's kind of like Clint's method of levitating. He bends over and grabs the tops of his boots and pulls really hard, and he can lift himself 2 or 3 feet off the ground.
Yeah, I'm always worried when people have helium heels. That puts you in very strange positions.
Mm-hmm.
But so the idea in itself is not unheard of. It's quite successful in some areas, but it's something that probably takes 5 to 6 years of preparation, a large cash investment as far as equipment, shelters, enough foliage for the deer population, and then you have, of course, the problem of the slaughterhouse, which has a lot of issues on the pollution side.
So if I were to look at it through the lens of an investment, why would I want to invest large amounts of money to raise deer when there's already a cattle industry that's been around forever? All of the kinks have been ironed out. I could import cattle, and that could be the basis of my herd. I think it's this free lunch aspect that appeals to Clint. We got these deer out here, so all we got to do is just catch the deer. And
No.
And
it's
then,
more complicated than that.
Yeah, and once we catch the deer, then we can build this industry, and it's going to be kind of a freebie.
Yeah, it sounds like the pot industry is going to bring billions of dollars to the island. It's another pie in the sky. Even though it works in some states, it is an industry that matured over several decades, and it takes a lot of cash upfront investment, and then you need to manage it. And I'm kind of skeptical when you see some of the government programs that cannot even run a pool, or the DMV. It takes you weeks, if not months at a time, to renew your driving license. I'm skeptical that they can develop such a program. And but yes, it does exist. It is quite successful. New Zealand is probably the most successful one around the world, raising game meat.
I think antelope is one of their biggest crops.
Antelope, red stag, and then also in Texas there's a huge ostrich industry. Ostrich is on the menu in many restaurants and things, but you know, like everything else, it's not an easy. You know, you snap your fingers and everything is going to fall into place. The problem on an island like Guam is that the surface that you need, you probably would need at least 200 hectares. And then most likely more along the side of the 500 hectares in order to sustain a deer population for meat production. And I don't think we have that much free land around the island. Most of the free land in the south central part of the island is controlled by the Navy, including the water dams and everything. So, and most of the free space would be in the south of the island. And frankly, this is also where the water supply is the most erratic. So if you have a dry season, what do? You lose a third of your herd? I don't know. It doesn't make much sense.
It doesn't to me, Frenchie. Well, thanks a lot for chiming in on that one.
Yeah.
And
Wisconsin does very well with deer farming.
Okay, well, that's good to know.
I guess they can do deep fried deer meat to go with the cheese curds.
Sounds right to me. Washing it all down with beer, right?
Yeah, of course. All right. Bye-bye.
Have a nice Thanksgiving, Frenchie.
You too. Bye-bye.
So long. I've got Drive-Through Jack on the line, but Jose, tell us a little bit more about the Kabakong brothers.
Oh, yeah, that was interesting. You know, Jose Tadafo, I'm sorry, I can't pronounce the last name.
Kabakong?
The other Jose on Facebook on the comments here had said that Obama had commuted the sentence of Roy Kabakong, and it turns out it was his brother whose sentence was commuted, along with another person named Frank Okiyama.
Yeah.
And I don't think Roy's sentence was commuted, but it also opened up another interesting point that Obama had commuted sentences for over 1,300 people, the most ever commuted by a president, and that was more than the last 12 presidents combined.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Social justice.
There you go.
Who cares about
the revolving door?
Social justice.
And this ties in, I don't know if you're going to talk about today, the no cash bail.
I remember the last month of May when Obama was in office, and an interviewer said to him, "Mr. President, what do you think about the Indianapolis 500?" President Obama said, "I think they're innocent." Yeah, social justice warrior in the White House. All right, so let's see. I've got Drive-Through Jack here wanting to talk about other than drive about drugs and deer. I suppose Drive-Through Jack has already figured out how well deer would work out in a drive-through menu. Is that correct, Drive-Through Jack?
Yeah, good afternoon there, Bob. Yeah, nothing like getting bananas through a drive-through. I guess that'll work. But I think I told you this story before. Wild deer and wild pig here in Guam, I consider them a nuisance. It's not because of myself. It's because I grew up with my aunt who was 4-foot Surahana, and she despised the deer and the wild pigs because they would kill all the fauna that she would use for her medicine. And when we used to go out and harvest the fauna that she needed for her medicine, she would always carry not a 12 gauge but a 20 gauge with her that stood almost as taller than she did. And it didn't matter whether we came across piglets, boars, deer, or some sort of fawn with a mother fawn. It was wasted. It was she didn't really like it, and that carried on. That played something on my effect. While people my age, as a child, grew up with Bambi, I grew up with, and they grew up with Charlotte's Web. I grew up with, they were just a nuisance. They were a nuisance. They were a pest, and they had to be gotten rid of because it was just getting harder and harder for my aunt to do her craft. So that's where my stance is on this wild pigs and these feral pigs and these wild deer. Besides the poor development schemes that we have here, just those two tests just adds havoc to it. And I agree that the best route is just to teach kids to go out there and hunt, and then have them a place to show them how to skin.
Well, Jack, if you have kids going out to hunt, you know what they're going to do? They're going to be walking around with rifles.
Don't name them Kyle.
Yeah, and any kid walking around with a rifle is doing something very, very wrong.
Yeah, but in that case, I'm surprised that there's no call for banning red SUVs. But
only in parking lot of Chinese restaurants.
Yeah. So, anyways, on the other case, I don't know if you were at DOC when they had a program there called Scared Straight. Do they still have that at DOC, or
they did? They had done away with it before I came along. I would have done away with it myself.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was not a good idea.
Yeah, so they had it there when I was going through middle school and high school, and there was this case where a young man in high school killed 2 reserved officers over a case of a few beers, and he got the book thrown at him, and we were going through DOC as a group of high schoolers, and it wasn't a good sight. It wasn't like the ones that they portray on TV. It was more refined that we were looking at our uncles and our cousins, and they were giving us warnings. Hey, don't do this, man. Don't go on drugs. Don't do this. I grew up with the Mokfuk 7 and then been splattered all over the news. And, it was a warning to all of us. But in this society, it seems like it's a challenge to the youth. It's not like hey, don't do this. It's bad for you. It's no, watch me do this. And I think that's the problem that we have to overcome. I disagree with drug courts. I remember when Judge Elizabeth Anderson brought that to Guam. It came out of Cook County. I just moved from Chicago, where they enacted those drug courts, and it came from a once a week thing to a whole month thing, and now it's a 24-hour drug court thing. And, I understand that the seed money was provided by the federal government at the time, and it was very attractive. But then the burden came onto the local courts that they have to fund this whole thing by themselves. And I don't know those types of courts, those specialized courts such as drug courts.
They're called therapeutic courts, Jack. And I'm not really crazy about the idea. Being a conservative sort of a guy, I hold the belief that the courts have only one purpose, and that is to provide effective, efficient, neutral, fair tribunals to provide justice in the individual case. But these therapeutic courts, like drug courts, use the coercive force of the judiciary to modify behavior, and I just don't think that that's what the courts are for.
I'm on your side on this one too, Bob. But on a lighter note, I really would like to thank you and especially Raymond. I know that Raymond lost a lot of money, being on the other side of the COVID Democrat programs. So, I really want to thank him. I really like to thank you also for providing us some sort of refuge and also a platform, for just us simple people that see the overreach of government. And I want to warn these Republicans and Democrats, and also these so-called entrepreneurs looking for government money to start their business. That's the last place for you to go, okay? Nothing here in Guam you can point to in which a private entrepreneur started a business and said, hey, look, I'm so successful because of this government involvement. No. If you have an idea, if you want to be an entrepreneur, follow, especially when it comes to food, follow the sanitary laws, follow the laws in the books, make it out the way you want to make it out. Just follow the laws, do it yourself, and promote it yourself. Nothing works better than word of mouth of your product. It isn't government sponsored,
Well, Jack, the government helps us out with tall tales an awful lot. Because every time somebody in government does something stupid, people are saying, God, I got to listen to tall tales and hear what Bob says about that.
Yeah, so, if you want to be a successful entrepreneur, try to deal as little as with government. Just follow the laws in the books,
Hey, Jack.
Do it on your own.
Jack, why don't you give the drive-thrus a break tomorrow and have your turkey at home with your family?
All right, Bob. Happy Thanksgiving.
You too, Jack. Thanks for calling. See you on Friday.
All right.
Yeah, drive-through, Jack. Okay, short break here, and then we come back, and we're actually going to start the card.
Listen to The Point anytime, anywhere on Odyssey. Odyssey is your new audio home for all the music, news, sports, and podcasts that matter to you. Find your favorite stations like The Point and discover more. Music stations, local and trusted news sources, sports talk and team coverage, plus today's biggest podcasts. Find it all on the Odyssey app. AUDACY.
Come try Guam's original Chamorro restaurant with Pica's Best 5 years running. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus to naktak, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet hamburgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña and Grand Plaza Tumon location. Call their Hagåtña location at 479-2652 for reservations.
Okay, so here we are. We got about 7 more minutes till the big halftime show, and I want to read a couple of things that Jose Ted Pago Jr. posted on Facebook. Perhaps chat about those for a few minutes before the halftime show. Jose said, just jumped out of my, I said here, He says, if you must invest in education and rehabilitation to deter demand, plus a better living wage and opportunities so people resorting to sell drugs is reduced. Well, let me just kind of go through this piece by piece. Investing in education, yeah, that's a great idea. If we're going to have public schools, they should be effective public schools, and they should train kids, as you were, teach kids, among other things, how to make a living. That's not the end. That's not the end of a public school education, but it's a really good start, how to make a living. That's not to say that things like art, music, etc., don't have a place in the curriculum, but if kids don't learn about making a living, and I'm not talking about turning every kid into a machinist. What I am talking about are the things that you really need to understand if you're going to have a job. Like you got to show up for work on time. You got to be dressed to do the work that you've been hired for, etc. Basic stuff like this that I'm afraid a lot of kids don't ever get a handle on and are kind of out of high school and they're not employable. Jose also says, and rehabilitation to deter demand. I don't see how rehabilitation deters demand. I think you want to deter demand before anybody needs rehabilitation. If rehabilitation is going to do anything, it might have an impact on recidivism, maybe not. And then, this is the one I really have a bone to pick with. He said, plus a better living wage and opportunities so people resorting to selling drugs is reduced. Now, what this posits is, every man, the kid, right? The kid graduates from high school and he applies at several different places and he doesn't get the job that he wants that pays him the kind of money he wants. And he said, well, I can't get a job that pays me enough money so I can marry my high school sweetheart and buy a house and raise a family. The only choice I got here is to deal drugs. I don't think that's why people go into dealing drugs. I don't think people go into dealing drugs to provide themselves with a living wage. I think they're attracted by, in the case of, say, the Cabocongs or this guy that pled guilty here with the 307 grams, et cetera, they're attracted by making large amounts of money, not a living wage, but large amounts of money. And then there are the poor folks down the food chain who resort to dealing drugs just so they have enough money to buy more drugs. Jose also says, plus the ability to purchase a house on Guam is freaking ridiculously outrageous, not commensurate with local wages. So how does this happen and what do we do about it? I think that, the only thing that can be done is we've got to open up the market so there are more houses available. More houses available, the lower the price. And part of the problem there is all of the regulations that we put in the way of building houses. Not to mention, I got into this, I think it was yesterday, the houses that we waste. We closed down Naval Air Station. We had an abundance of houses on it. A lot of them turned into instant slums. If you drive down what we now call Magahaga Highway, you see a lot of just houses that look like they went through World War II. We had all of the old teacherage. Same thing happened to that. So when we, and then the newspaper ran stories about a lot of gardens and other government initiatives where the houses are standing empty because they haven't been maintained.
Or they didn't have any infrastructure. They just built the houses.
Yeah. So the thing that will cause wages to increase, and some basic laws of economics, real wages increase when there's an increase in production. Now, by real wages, this is what we're talking about. If I had to work, let's say we're talking about gasoline. Yeah, we'll come back to this right after the big halftime show, but if I were to buy 1 gallon of gasoline and it's at $5 a gallon, come back and make $5 right after the halftime show.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
A planetary defense test launch. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. With the last hour, SpaceX launching a Falcon 9 rocket from Vandenberg Air Force Base in California.
3, 2, 1. And liftoff of the Falcon 9 and DART on NASA's first planetary defense test to intentionally crash into an asteroid.
The rocket is carrying NASA's DART space probe on a mission to test whether crashing it into an asteroid next September could alter that space rock's course, technology that could one day save the planet. SpaceX says its booster rocket landed upright on the recovery barge in the Pacific. President Biden Tuesday ordering 50 million barrels to be released from the country's strategic petroleum reserves.
A step taken in coordination with other leading economies to help bring down prices. Gas in the U.S. is averaging about $3.40 a gallon. That is a 50% increase from a year ago. China, India, Japan, South Korea, and the U.K. are also releasing oil reserves. The U.S. stockpile has more than 600 million barrels. Americans consumed about 20 million barrels a day in September.
Fox's Jared Halpern. Critics charge it's symbolic and won't have much of an impact on fuel prices. There's been another death from Sunday's vehicle attack on Waukesha, Wisconsin's Christmas parade. An 8-year-old boy died Tuesday.
We do expect a 6th count for first-degree intentional homicide to be issued or added, to this case.
Prosecutor Susan Opper calling the defendant both a flight and violence risk successfully argued for a high bail. The court ordering that Darrell Brooks be held on $5 million bail. A jury in federal court in Ohio has found CVS, Walgreens, and Walmart at least partially to blame for opioid deaths in 2 Ohio counties. A judge will later determine damages. All 3 companies plan to appeal. America is listening to Fox News.
As we celebrate this holiday season, we reflect on the hardships of the past 2 years and remain grateful for the family and friends who share our journey and lighten our burdens. The team at Security Title is proud of the work we do to support ourselves and our families, to serve and care for our customers, and to give back to our community. May this season of joy and the new year bring happiness, good health, and prosperity to you and yours. Merry Christmas from all of us at Security Title.
Santa's come in and things are looking up. Bank Pacific has rolled out Rudolph's favorite My Christmas loan with an annual percentage interest rate as low as 3.99% and up to $50,000. And with the new Bank Pacific contactless Visa debit card, you can have the flexibility of using your money when you want to, where you want to. My Christmas Loan contactless Visa debit card. Let's make Christmas merrier this year. Equal opportunity lender. Credit conditions apply. Merry Christmas from Bank Pacific.
Jury deliberations recessed for the night in the Georgia murder trial of 3 men accused of Ahmaud Arbery's murder last summer.
There was a real fight that we saw throughout the day in closing arguments over a videotape from security footage that showed Ahmaud Arbery on several occasions inside a partially constructed house. For the defense, they made the claim that that shows Arbery was breaking the law and that he's responsible for his own fate. The prosecutor made the case that at no point did Arbery ever steal anything from that partially constructed home. Thus, the claim of citizen's arrest simply cannot stand.
When they do something like this, they have to be held accountable and responsible. Nobody gets a free pass.
The attorney for Travis McMichael, the admitted shooter, said that McMichael acted in self-defense.
Fox's Steve Harrigan reports deliberations will resume Wednesday. E-cigarette maker Juul reaching a settlement with the state of Arizona in a consumer fraud lawsuit. It will pay more than $14 million to fund smoking and vaping cessation programs and will not market its products to young people. It's not exactly over the river and through the woods, but the first family has left Washington and headed to Nantucket Island, Massachusetts for the holiday.
President Biden and his family have been going to Nantucket for years, but the Cape Cod region has drawn many other commanders-in-chief. CapeCod.com says Ulysses Grant visited in 1873. Grover Cleveland had his summer White House on the Upper Cape. President Theodore Roosevelt also visited in 1908. In later years, the Kennedys developed a compound in Hyannisport. Bill and Hillary Clinton spent plenty of time on the Cape and its islands, not just vacationing, but holding fundraisers as well. And after he left office, President Obama bought a home on Martha's Vineyard. Jill Nato, Fox News.
And I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
Come try Guam's original Chamorro restaurant with Pica's Best 5 years running. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus to nectat, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet hamburgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña and Grand Plaza Tumon location. Call their Hagåtña location at 479-2652 for reservations.
When's the last time you looked at your homeowner's insurance?
An easily overlooked part of covering our home is what's inside of it. Over time, we buy things we don't want to lose, but don't update our contents coverage. The smart thing to do is get the answers and level up our insurance to make sure we're totally protected.
That's the Insurance Extra Point. Get out there and make something good happen today by calling Guahan Insurance Services at 475-1162 or visit us at the Camacho Landmark Center in Tamuning.
Listen to The Point anytime, anywhere on Odyssey. Odyssey is your new audio home for all the music, news, sports, and podcasts that matter to you. Find your favorite stations like The Point and discover more. Music stations, local and trusted news sources, sports talk and team coverage, plus today's biggest podcasts. Find it all on the Odyssey app. AUDACY.
Guam Auto Spot has the best selection in Buick, GMC, Mitsubishi, and used cars like the 2021 Mitsubishi Mirage starting at $127 per paycheck. Zero down. Call 671-478-AUTO to take a test drive or get pre-approved online at GuamAutospot.com.
Before the break, before the big halftime show that we all like so much, I was talking about a couple of posts by Jose Tedfago Jr. The last one reads, plus the ability to purchase a house on Guam is freaking ridiculously outrageous and not commensurate with labor wages. And I started talking a little bit about some basic economics, explaining the concept of real wages. Real wages means the amount of time a person needs to work in order to purchase something. So we've seen how wages have gone up dramatically in, say, in the last 20 years. People that were making $20,000 20 years ago are probably making $45,000 now. Does that mean that they're living better? Nope. Real wages means this. If we start out with gasoline, if gasoline costs $2 a gallon and I'm making $2 an hour, then the price of gasoline goes to $5 an hour and my salary goes to $3 an hour, although I'm making 50% more than I made before, my real wages have gone down. That's what real wages mean. Real wages only increase when there is an increase in production, changing the numbers, changing the size of wages. If prices go up the same degree, really doesn't amount to creation of new wealth. So there has to be a creation of wealth and an increase in production. For us, what that means is something other than recirculating the same dollars around through our economy. We have to bring in wealth from somewhere outside the island since we don't create wealth here. We don't do any mining. We don't do any agriculture to speak of, although Clint is really trying. He wants to get us into the deer business and the marijuana business. And when those things take off, man, everybody is going to be able to afford a house. So what we have so far, we have the military, which brings in a lot of money from off-island, and we had tourism that brought in lots of money from off-island. That's not so much anymore. Once upon a time, we had a growing tuna fishing industry. Unfortunately, the doggone fish swam away. I don't think they had government permission, but they did anyhow. So we're talking a little bit about that. Ted Pago also talked about education, and I got another voice here in education, which I agree with. Schools should do a lot of things. I think one thing is that when a kid graduates from high school, he ought to have something like an independent thought process. He ought to know something. You know, he ought to know that World War II came after World War I. And he ought to know the name of the man who's buried in Grant's tomb. Some of these things like that. And I think I agree with one of our posters here that kid ought to have something called a work ethic. Now, that's unfortunate the word ethic is used there because a work ethic doesn't have anything to do with ethics. You know, that particular brand of behavior that's kind of grounded in honesty. A good work ethic means that an employee goes to work looking for ways to do his job, to do it and to do it well. Shows up on time, dressed for the job with the attitude, I'm going to come in and I'm going to do a really good job at my job today. And one of our posters here says, yeah, that's something you should learn at home. I agree. It should be learned at home. There's nothing wrong with reinforcing it at school. And you reinforce it at school by, teaching kids that when the class starts, they're in their desks ready to go to work. Anyhow, so much for Jose Ted Pago's post. Glad you posted there, Jose. A little food for thought, which is what Tall Tales is all about. Let's go to the card. And maybe before I go to the card, I'm going to check and see who's in the green room here. It's R. Carl. Surprise, surprise. R. Carl, do you want to talk about work ethic, drugs, Binadu, Bobwit?
All of that.
All right.
No, I just want to chime in just a bit about the matter of education, and there's this movement among some academics, for all people to have a college degree. And I think that's just horrible advice. It's like, you're in a baseball stadium, and if you stand up to get a better view, that's good. But if everybody stands up, you're right back where you started.
Good analogy.
Yeah, so if everybody has a degree, it's just like graduating from high school, big deal. And another thing that people confuse with is this matter of, quote, education, unquote. You know, they think going to school and getting a degree is somehow valuable to the marketplace. But if you can't use that knowledge to create value that the marketplace, the employers and the customers are willing to pay for, it's just worthless. You know, or largely, it doesn't really mean anything because there's no demand for it. And I think there's a lot of confusion.
You mean there's no demand for ethnic studies or women's studies or... Go on, girl.
Yeah, exactly. There's this, and I have a feeling one of the reasons why there's this demand for free education for everybody because it gives academics access of 4 more years to the minds of young people, you know, especially in the humanities and the social sciences. You know, it's 4 more years of indoctrination, which is beginning now, you know, at elementary school level. But, you know, they know, you know, that the key to creating good soldiers for the revolution is that access to their minds and that indoctrination. And so, anyway, you know, I think education is valuable depending on how you define that education. Is it something that enables you to actually create value that the marketplace is willing to pay for? And there's, you know, Thomas Sowell talks about this concept that economists talk about, human capital. And, you know, some of that, anything between our ears that enables us to create value for the marketplace is human capital. And that includes our habits, our work habits, and, you know, our ability to think critically, think creatively, and create solutions. Reading is human capital, you know, being able to read and understand what you're reading. Work skills that are in demand in the marketplace, that's all human capital. And I think there's a misplaced drive to give people, quote, education, you know, unquote, that is largely worthless. And that's why we have so many Uber drivers with master's degrees in America, you know, and working at Starbucks.
And some commentators, Carl, say that the phenomenon that you're describing is responsible for an awful lot of Antifa members, people that, you know, that borrowed a lot of money, went to school with the idea, well, you go to, you know, it's hard, go to college, get a degree, you'll be able to get a good job and you'll have a good life. So they go to college and get a degree in some social justice type academic pursuit. No one will hire them. They're very disgruntled and very angry, and they take their anger out in this Antifa type activity.
Yeah, and one irony is that it was government that created this situation. There was a time, you know, just a few decades ago where it was common for people to work their way through college. They worked part-time and they went to school. And they came out of school with no debt, with zero. But when they started to heavily subsidize it, the motivation for the administrations began to be not to contain costs, but to capture as much of those subsidies as possible.
So that the subsidized tuition became the baseline, and then the colleges tacked on their profit margin on top of that. Is what happened.
Yes, exactly. And this was compounded by, in the 60s, this trend toward these massive bureaucracies within the colleges to, what do they call these things? The equity, diversity, or the diversity administrators, you know. I mean, they're paid massive amounts of money to administer all these programs. I mean, you're talking about huge amounts of money. So, yeah, you know, it's typical that, you know, government rides up on this, in shining armor on a white steed and to solve the problem, which they created in the first place. It happens over and over and over again.
Carl, I'd be a little careful about this white steed if I were you.
Oh, yeah. Maybe I should have said a black and white steed.
Well, a steed with with a complete absence of color might have been preferable.
Oh, yeah, a transparent steed, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's that would be fair. Anyway, Bob, thank you for allowing me to chime in. I appreciate it. Always an interesting show.
Okay, Carl. Have a nice Thanksgiving.
All right, you too.
See you on Friday. Okay, our Carl, pretty consistent in his views on economics, education, etc. I don't think I'll ever have the opportunity to shake and howdy with Thomas Sowell. Next best thing, though, is to shake and howdy with our Carl, who is a real disciple. Okay, let's see what I've got on the card for this afternoon. I start out with the governor versus us. And this, if you're watching on Facebook, this is what the governor has done for us for the day after tomorrow. She's just given us the finger again. Yeah. Next item on the card is the governor versus the heirs of the 18. Then we've got the Civil Service Commission versus justice. And then a little bit more, the left versus Rittenhouse, looters versus Nordstrom, Turley versus the media cartel. I don't think we've gotten into that one yet, have we, Jose? And then Turley versus Pencil Neck, repeat versus repeat. I don't think we'll repeat. I don't know if we'll ever get to repeat versus repeat, but I'll keep repeating it just in case. All right, governor versus us. And this is a story, we had the first story ran on PNC last night, day after Thanksgiving to be declared a holiday. I'm so happy. The Post ran a story this morning that fleshed it out a little bit. Governor Leanne Guerrero changed her mind about Black Friday.
It was up to me, I'd make Black Friday a holiday, if it was up to me.
If it were up to me. Changed her mind about, and will sign an executive order to designate the day after Thanksgiving a public holiday in Guam. Black Friday is traditionally one of the biggest shopping days on the island and across the United States, with retailers offering discounts for nearly all types of merchandise and therefore attracting bigger crowds of shoppers than news. Well, that's a great reason to give government employees so they can go shop. Now, wait a minute. Doesn't make any sense at all, does it? At a November 19 press conference, the governor said Black Friday wouldn't be a government of Guam holiday. And I was about ready to give her, a 3 cheers today for not caving in on that stupid tradition. By Tuesday night, or 4 days later, Adelup announced that the governor is expected to sign on Wednesday an executive order designating Friday, November 26, a public holiday. Now, what do you think happened during those 4 days? I can imagine this. Remember my political prism, that magical prism that once you look through it, it filters out every single concept. All ideas. It filters out law, ethics, morality, practicality, you name it. Everything is gone except for one thing, the political considerations of a particular effort. So I suspect something like this happened. Hey, Governor, come over here. I want to whisper in your ear. You know this thing about the day after Thanksgiving? You don't want to give a holiday. You know, there are 11,000 people that work for the government of Guam. Every single one of them is going to be angry at you, and they're going to remember next election. So, Governor, you might really want to think about, are you sure you don't want to make the day after Thanksgiving a holiday? Well, If it were up to me, I'd make the day after Thanksgiving a holiday. Hey, Governor, it is up to you. You're the governor, remember? Are you having a Joe Biden moment here?
Let's go, Lou.
Yeah, so I can't think of anything else that could have happened. I can't think that there is a logical argument anywhere available to anyone that would justify shutting down the government and giving everybody a day off with pay. A few years ago, the Daily News ran a story on the front page that the Bureau of Budget and Management Research, or no, it was the Director of Administration, had determined that it cost over $900,000 to shut the government down. By the time you pay the double pay, by the time you figure in all of the money that you're paying for nothing because people aren't working, over $900,000. And I add to that, the cost is greater than that because a lot of things that don't get done because of that shutdown will never get done. People aren't able to pay taxes, apply for licenses. There are a lot of things where commerce depends on a functioning government. So we'll be paying out a lot of double pay. We'll be paying a lot of people to stay home and do nothing. It's just an absolute useless undertaking. And every governor that's ever done it has received the same huge batch of criticism from me. If a governor ever has the intestinal fortitude to come along and say the day after Thanksgiving is a day that we can get a lot of work done. So my cabinet and I and everybody else in the government are going to be working really hard to make sure that we have many Thanksgivings in the future. If that ever happened, you know, I would figure out a way to give that governor a blue star. But this whole pandering to the government employee, and there's a little bit more here, the part that I kind of like. There's a direct quote from the governor. Among the blessings our government workers who have dedicated the best of their abilities to continue serving our people throughout this unprecedented time in the history of the island, our nation, and the world, she said. This is just more of this, because we all know that a lot of those dedicated employees got to stay home and get paid at the beginning of this pandemic. And then the next thing was the whining about, how come we're not getting double pay? And then all of the whining about, we got to have incentive pay, 10, 15, or 25%. I don't want to hear anything about the dedicated abilities of the government employees. There are some people that work really hard, do a really good job, and are good at their jobs. But to use that same paintbrush to paint everybody as you give them another freebie, Governor, that's just giving the rest of the people of this island the finger. And I used to make this argument before, back in the days when we had a viable tourist industry, that on the day after Thanksgiving, the people that pay the bills around here, the guys that drive the tour buses, the desk clerks, the dishwashers, the waiters, the waitresses, the maids, everybody that works down there in San Vittori's Boulevard was probably lucky if they got Thanksgiving off. And then here you want to come along with this silliness and give everybody the day after Thanksgiving off. It's just a travesty. It's not even close to good government. It's, I suspect, a way to appeal to the basest part of people's emotions.
It's from her playbook, though, because the year before the elections, when she was still in charge of Bank of Guam, they received a Black Friday holiday as well. I remember they made big news of it in the paper, too.
Sure.
It was incredible.
Yeah.
But I wonder who's picking up the bill for this, ARP?
For the Black Friday? It's just general fund money. Now, there may be some creative ways of reimbursing parts of the general fund with ARP monies, but it just comes straight out of the same payroll account.
Our pockets.
Our budget. It comes out of our pockets, yeah. The governor said in the spirit of Thanksgiving, she has been reflected on the many blessings in the difficult year that Guam will soon be leaving behind. So at first she said no holiday, but then she reflected. Lieutenant Governor Josh Tenorio said the last 2 years have been especially challenging, with all these days where government employees could stay home and get paid, and that the administration recognizes that each of you have made so many sacrifices to keep one another safe. Yeah, you know, I wonder if Saturday Night Live is looking for joke writers. Because when Lieutenant Governor Josh Tenorio gets done being Lieutenant Governor, he might be able to go to work for Saturday Night Live. And there's a quote: "This pandemic truly forces us to focus on what's important, which is a lot of freebies. And for many of us, it reminded us to put our families first. With the holidays here, please continue to do good for our community by celebrating safely and responsibly. But don't even think about coming to work on Friday. Don't even think about your job. Put it off until at least 10 o'clock on Monday morning." An effective, efficient government operating within the rule of law, providing the basic government services on at least a break-even basis. Not even close. All right, let's head for Wrigley Field, Jose.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts. Brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
Hey, let's go to Tango Theaters and watch a movie.
No way, I'm broke. How am I gonna buy snacks?
They have a combo special for the whole month of November called the G's for Giving Combo Specials. You can choose from 2 combos for just $13.75. G Combo 1 with a drink, popcorn, and candy, or G Combo 2 with a drink, hot dog, and chips.
Wow, okay, that sounds good.
A portion of the proceeds will be donated to the UOG Endowment Foundations for scholarships and programs.
Cool, it'll be my treat. I'll buy 2 combos.
Visit Tango Theaters and grab yourself a G Combo special during the whole month of November.
Okay, so here we are, Wrigley Field in Chicago, the world's most beautiful ballpark, ivy-covered walls, a nice-looking place, the last major league park to go with lights. P.K. Wrigley said he didn't want to have lights in his ballpark. Wrigley finally had to cave in. It didn't help him win games, but they did it anyhow. So 7th inning stretch, that means we got just 2 more innings of Tall Tales before Thanksgiving, which Jose and I are going to be celebrating at home. Sorry, folks, no Tall Tales tomorrow, but we will be back on Friday, and we're not going to be celebrating the fact that the government of Guam is closed on Friday. But if you work for the government of Guam, it's a golden opportunity for you to tune in at the beginning, stay through to the end, post on Facebook, call in, etc. So the governor perhaps won some with government employees with the Thanksgiving, with the Friday holiday, but she lost some with the heirs of the 18 families who owned the real property that we now call the Eagles Field lot that was condemned by the United States. And one of their advocates, a certain Troy Torres, said if the Navy declared that land excess, then it should go to the government of Guam, which should deed it to the Ancestors Lands Commission, which should then deed it to the heirs of the 18 pre-condemnation owners. That's what Troy says. We've given a lot of airtime to this. Now, here's what the governor said. It was quoted in PNC last night. Governor Leon Guerrero on Wednesday clarified that the military is not returning Eagles Field to the government of Guam and that Guam is just leasing it for use as the site of the new hospital and health center. And of course, Troy's plea was, why are you leasing? Why don't you just tell the governor, no, give it deeded to us in fee simple, don't lease it. And by the way, Governor, did you ask him to lease it to us? Was that your request? Did you say, hey, Secretary of the Navy, don't deed us that land. Just let us have a long-term lease, like maybe 100 years. That way we won't have to give it back to the pre-condemnation owners. You got it? Yeah, thank you. That's kind of what Troy is suggesting. The governor made the clarification after arguments were made that original landowners, by that they mean pre-condemnation landowners, should have the first crack at lands returned by the military. Quote, there's been a lot of misinformation out there. First of all, this property that the military is allowing us to use is a lease, a license, and then a lease. Now, I'm going to turn on the Law and Order notebooks here, Jose. License is a term that occurs in real property that most people flub because they think license, oh, I have a driver's license in my pocket, or my uncle had a pilot's license. So how does land have a license? License to do what? And this is how it works. Let's say that we have a restaurant, and inside that restaurant, there's no music. That's probably a pretty archaic example, but I hope people understand. So Mr. Jukebox comes down and says, I'd like to put a jukebox in your restaurant. Does anybody remember what a jukebox is anymore? Yeah. And so the restaurateur says, okay, how do we work that out? And the jukebox distributor says, you will give me a license to place my jukebox inside your restaurant. And what that means is that you have permission to do something that you would not have permission to do without the jukebox. You can wheel your jukebox in there, you can set it up, and you could leave it there for the term of the license. It's not a lease, it's not a rental, it is a license that allows you to do something on somebody else's real property. That is a good example of a license. So if you have a license for real property, the fee owner still maintains the fee simple title to the property, but he just, in essence, gives someone else permission to come on that land and to do something that he would not be able to do, would probably be trespassing if it weren't for the existence of that license. So the first news story that came out said that the Navy was going to give the government of Guam a license for Eagle Field so that some of the planning and other things could begin while they were working out the terms of a lease. Anyhow, this is what the governor said. First of all, the property that the military is allowing us to use is a lease, a license and then a lease. They're not returning this property to us. They are allowing us to use it for the purpose of the medical complex, Leon Guerrero said in an interview with News Talk 57's Patty somebody. All right, now if that's what she said, then if the documents reflect what she said, I could understand how that would work, and I probably could support it. If there is, in fact, a 100-year lease, a nice legal document, you know, with all kinds of signatures and whereases and stuff like that, and the lease says that the United States government, as lessor, leases to the government of Guam as lessee Eagles Field for the purpose of building a medical complex, to wit, and that's it. You know, that would make a whole lot of sense to me. Because if I were the Secretary of the Navy, I'd be looking out for the Navy. I wouldn't be looking out for the heirs of the 18. I'd be looking out for the Navy. And if I'm the Secretary of the Navy, it occurs to me that having a well-functioning hospital on this island benefits me. Now, I got my own hospital, the Secretary of the Navy says, you know, but it is not expandable. We've had some good working relationship between the two hospitals in the past, and a lot of people that will do business with the Navy and the Air Force, who even work for the Navy and the Air Force, are going to be using that civilian hospital. So the Secretary of the Navy says it's to my advantage to have another hospital here on the island. He said, then he asked himself the other question, how much does it help me to cede this land to the government of Guam in fee simple and watch them give it away like they've given away everything else, including the wastewater treatment plant and including the right-of-way for the airport access road. That doesn't help me at all. It doesn't help anybody except the heirs of the 18. Other than that, it doesn't help the people of Guam. It doesn't help anybody. So I could see the Secretary of the Navy saying, yeah, we'll give you a 100-year lease so you can build your hospital, and the documents will reflect it. That makes a whole lot of sense to me. The governor goes on to say, if we don't use it for that purpose, they'll take it back. According to the governor, Eagles Field was not on the list of net negative land. You remember the Navy came up with a list of properties that it was possible might be released back to the government in the future. This piece of property wasn't on that list. It was not when I was looking for areas for the new hospital and health complex, and I was discussing with the federal government on the possibility of retaining lands to the original landowners, meaning the pre-condemnation landowners. The governor said there is a list that they identify and that past administrations have concurred with. And Eagles Field was not in that list. It was never on that wheel for return to be given back. So, you know, part of me is happy about this. Part of me not so happy. The part of me is happy is this. If what we'll call the Torres position were followed through and the Secretary of the Navy deeds the real property to the government of Guam in fee simple, the land is then deeded to the Ancestral Lands Commission, who then is supposed to deed it to the heirs of the 18 pre-condemnation owners. Well, first of all, 70 years ago was when that land was condemned, according to Troy. How many times have people in the chain of title died without their estates being probated? So how long would it take to set up 18 gigantic probates to determine who actually are the surviving heirs of the 18? I would say it would take a long, long time. We're talking about finishing the hospital in 5 years. If you're at all familiar with probate cases, they are not, there's no speedy trial rule in probate. They don't move very fast. So that's one point. Second point is this, and I made this point on the radio yesterday. When the United States government takes real property in fee simple, there is no reversionary interest left in the pre-condemnation owners. The pre-condemnation owner is as much a stranger to that land as Jose or the guy out in the front of the building is. Just complete strangers to the land.
Complete.
Yeah, they don't have any right to get that land back. This is These have all been ex gratia payments on behalf of the government of Guam without consideration. And maybe some real problems down the road because the Navy does have a reversionary clause in that real property. So if we just say that we're going to take real property, the title of which is in the government of Guam for use for the public benefit, and give that land to a private party and and allow that private party to sell that property, where does that money come from? It comes from the taxpayer. If Blackacre goes back to the pre-condemnation owner and he sells it for $1 million, that's $1 million that could go into the Treasury of Guam. But we've given it away. It's another form of wealth redistribution. I posed a solution because, in order to make this thing palatable to the lawmakers, the pre-condemnation landowners had to have a horror story to tell. We didn't want them to take the land. We were so grateful for World War II that we gave the land away. We had the idea that when they didn't need it anymore, they'd give it back. They were really rough on us, and they kind of coerced us into signing the papers. We didn't really want to. We didn't know. We were on and on and on and on. They didn't pay us fair market value for it. They only gave us 6 cents a square meter. So you have to have this narrative going in the background to justify why the government of Guam should give away a valuable asset for nothing. So and of course, the word that we always use to label these kinds of narrative is the J word, justice. It's time we did justice for the pre-condemnation landowners. So we're going to head for Churchill Downs, and I'll see if I can find some justice in Churchill Downs. We'll come back.
Santa's coming and things are looking up. Bank Pacific has rolled out Rudolph's favorite My Christmas loan with an annual percentage interest rate as low as 3.99% and up to $50,000. And with the new Bank Pacific contactless Visa debit card, you can have the flexibility of using your money when you want to, where you want to. My Christmas Loan contactless Visa debit card. Let's make Christmas merrier this year. Equal opportunity lender. Credit conditions apply. Merry Christmas from Bank Pacific.
Come try Guam's original Chamorro restaurant with Pica's Best 5 years running. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus to naktak, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet hamburgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña and Grand Plaza Tumon location. Call their Hagåtña location at 479-2652 for reservations.
Heading down that home stretch of Churchill Downs today for the only day of the year, there will be a turkey at the finish line tomorrow. So before we broke for Churchill Downs, I was talking about justice. And, of course, people will come up with these narratives. They will tell their narrative in a light most favorable to them, trying to be persuasive, and they will tag the tagline on what they're looking for is never money, monetary rewards, the ability to make money, justice. All we want is justice. So here's a possibility. Here's something to think about. Let's say that Blackacre was taken in 1950 and that $100 was given for Blackacre in 1950. And everybody says, well, that just wasn't enough back in those days. Here's justice. Let's get the surveyor, the accountant, and the appraiser together. Let them survey Blackacre and say, in 1950, this is what Blackacre really was worth. Come up with a number that those three professionals could agree to. Then you say, okay, since 1950, 71 years later, what happened to that? And let's say that instead of 100, it should have been 200. So 200 over the years, two things happen. The value of the land increases, and the 100 or the 200 would have borne interest. Okay? You compensate for the interest that accrued at the going rates during that period. And you arrive at what you would call the present value of Blackacre. And the government then sells Blackacre for fair market value and cuts a check to the heirs of the 18 and distributes that money amongst them. The rest of the money goes into the Treasury and benefits all of us. Otherwise, what we're doing is we're allowing the heirs of the 18, if the Troy provision goes forward, what we're doing is we're creating a gigantic windfall for the heirs of the 18 to sell that land that they get from the government of Guam to build a hospital. And who pays for the hospital? All of us. So it's a classic case of wealth redistribution, where in order for us to get a hospital that benefits all of the people, we've got to put money in the pocket of the 18. So this may very well be a case of the governor doing something perhaps for the right reason, for the right thing, maybe for the wrong reason. I don't know. But it's something that we're going to walk through very carefully, and I would ask everyone to think through this thing carefully, because this knee-jerk, well, we should give the land back to the original owners, doesn't stand the test of a perceptive analysis. We had a caller on yesterday who felt so strongly about a point that he actually repeated it. And he said that he didn't like Troy's editorial because it gave people false hopes. And the false hope, I think, is probably grounded on the government settling on the analysis that I provided rather than the one that Troy provided. I don't know if Troy is on board today or not. Maybe he'll come on board.
He popped up earlier on the show.
He did? Yeah, okay. All right, so we got about 10 more minutes. Let's talk. I'm kind of fixated on justice today here. You know, everybody wants justice. And the next item on the card is the Civil Service Commission versus justice. Now, the common perception is, oh yeah, the Civil Service Commission, they're always right there with justice, because they always give the employee his job back, no matter what. That's justice, right? The employee has a family to feed and a mortgage to pay. Here's the story that ran in the Daily News. A former airport police officer who allegedly saw a steep reduction in pay and a demotion last year after developed a disability was denied his appeal to the Civil Service Commission's decision to sustain his demotion because the commission did not handle the case in a timely manner. Well, what else is new? John V. Santiago, now a clerk with the airport, requested that an investigation be conducted in 2020. Santiago was hired by the airport in 1991 and was employed as an airport police officer before he saw a nearly $40,000 reduction in his combined salary and benefits when his position changed to a clerk 3 between first and second quarter of 2020. The Civil Service Commission in June of this year voted to preliminarily, this is an example of the Civil Service Commission, which if you go up there, you'll see has a board. There's a Civil Service Commission board. And they have statutory authority to nullify personnel actions. So if you nullify a personnel action, the personnel action is, guess what, void. That's not good enough for them. They null and void personnel actions.
Which comes first?
Yeah. Well, I've explained before that a lot of times you have two words that say the same thing, cease and desist, because you have the old English and the law French. because after the Norman Conquest, the language of the courts shifted over to what's called law French. So to make sure there's no misunderstanding, you use the English word and the law French word. Null, a very English sounding word, right? And void, a very French sounding word. But you don't use the two of them at the same time. You could say this paper is null and void, or you could say I'm going to nullify this action, and then it'll become void. But not the Civil Service Commission. The Civil Service Commission in June of this year voted to preliminarily null and void Santiago's demotion and ordered the airport to place him on the pay step closest to, but not higher than, what Santiago had prior to the demotion. Commission Chairman Juan K. Calvo at the time said the airport's rule governing employees who develop disabilities unrelated to work was in violation of the Americans with Disabilities Act. Attorney Juan K. Calvo, who used to be the personnel management analyst at the Civil Service Commission, remind me someday to go on a rant to never put people on boards or commissions where they used to be employees, or especially where they used to be directors. I wouldn't take a seat on the Board of Education for blood nor money. It just isn't right to have someone who's been the director come in and say, well, you know, this is the way we should do it. And have everybody think, well, you know, he used to be the director. He must know. Well, this guy used to work for the commission, so I'm sure he understands the Americans with Disabilities Act. The ironic thing is that it just doesn't work at all. We had a case not too long ago where Yuka Hechinova was working for the public auditor, and Yuka wanted to run for public auditor, but she didn't want to resign her job. And some yahoo at the Civil Service Commission said, well, according to our Hatch Act, you have to resign in order to run for the job. Well, idiots like me would get out the statute and look at it, and that was just wrong. And later on, the gnomes of the Civil Service Commission said, yeah, that was bad advice. But in the meantime, Yuka had resigned. And she ran for a public, and she lost. And, you know, if it hadn't been for the bad advice, she might still be there, which probably would have made the current public auditor very happy. So the fact that somebody works at the Civil Service Commission or is on the Civil Service Commission board doesn't mean that they know anything at all about personnel law. In fact, I think sometimes it's contraindicated. Witness Juan K. Calvo. Now, just from this story here, this is what it looks like happened. The employee becomes disabled under the Americans with Disability Act. A disabled employee tells his employer, I have a disability. The employer has a duty to make a reasonable accommodation to accommodate that employee unless that accommodation would be an undue burden on the employee. Apparently, an accommodation was made. In fact, more than an accommodation, because according to this story, Civil Service Commission voted to preliminary, I'm not going to do this null and void thing anymore, preliminary nullify Santiago's demotion and ordered the airport to place him on the pay step closest to but not higher than what Santiago had prior to the demotion, which doesn't seem like the law to me either. Going on with the story, but at a follow-up hearing in July, commissioners lacked the 4 votes needed to uphold the nullification decision, and Santiago's demotion was sustained. Santiago attempted to appeal the decision, but the commission's legal counsel attorney, Eric Miller, informed them last week that they could not void the demotion because Guam law required them to do so within 180 days. This matter, the complaint was filed on July 10, 2020. This was during the pandemic. And so GovGuam was closed for almost 6 months, Miller said. But even with an extension caused by the closure, the final day to void Santiago's demotion was September 8. The commission simply doesn't have the authority to void this personnel action. So that's what they wanted. They just wanted the motion to be washed out. But they couldn't. Commission members voted unanimously to deny Santiago's appeal on Miller's advice. And then here's the punchline. According to attorney Jay Areola, who represented the Guam International Airport Authority, the situation could have been avoided if the commission had adopted proper rules and regulations to handle appeals, which Guam law allowed. If you have the rules and regs as being argued in our motions to dismiss, this might not be an issue. Staff would have had timelines set forth and would have had a timeline for review and for the appeal. Justice. Okay, happy Thanksgiving to everybody, all you tailgaters out there in our international radio listening audience. Happy Thanksgiving, and let's go, Brandon.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
On NASA's space launch, I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. SpaceX launching a Falcon 9 rocket from a California Air Force base overnight, carrying NASA's DART space probe into orbit.
The double asteroid redirection test is NASA's first planetary defense mission. It's a test to a method to protect Earth in case of an asteroid impact threat. It will help determine whether the kinetic effect of spacecraft impact could successfully deflect an asteroid on a collision course with Earth.
Fox's Chris DeMeo reports the DART crash into the asteroid will come late next year. NASA says there are now nearly 24 space rocks that could collide with Earth over the next century. A sixth person has died from injuries suffered Sunday when a car careened through the Christmas parade in Waukesha, Wisconsin. This time, it's a child.
8-year-old Jackson Sparks of McGuanago died of his injuries Tuesday at Children's Hospital, where he and his 12-year-old brother Tucker were being treated. An online fundraiser for the Sparks family confirmed his death, saying he underwent brain surgery Sunday night but needed a miracle.
Sam Kramer of Fox 6 in Milwaukee reports Children's Hospital of Wisconsin says they are still treating 13 patients. 6 of them are critical. The accused driver, Darrell Brooks, has been ordered held on $5 million bond. 3 large companies have been found at least partially responsible for an opioid crisis in 2 counties in Ohio.
A federal jury says CVS, Walgreens, and Walmart contributed to the opioid epidemic in Lake and Trumbull counties, that pharmacists recklessly distributed the pills, which helped to create what attorneys call a public nuisance, while attorneys for the pharmacies argued that pharmaceutical companies convinced doctors to prescribe these medications, insisting on their safety, and the doctors are the ones who prescribed them. Attorneys for the counties argued that pharmacies should have done more to flag suspicious prescriptions and amounts. The judge will determine how much the pharmacies will pay to the counties.
Fox's Jessica Rosenthal. America is listening to Fox News.
From the Fox News Podcasts Network. Stay on top of the latest news and information from Fox News. Listen and download the Fox News Hourly Update on your time. The trending stories you need anytime you want it. Listen and download now by going to foxnewspodcasts.com. From the Fox News Podcasts Network.
What are